Welcome to Grow Law Firm Podcast. I have a great guest with me here today, Brett Trembly of GetSteppedUp.com. Brett co-founded this company. They primarily work with small law firms, help them staffed up, as the name entails. And I think the biggest benefit of having the right people, getting the right people in the right seats, is that you can help law firms, or you do help law firms rather, get the right people in the right seats so that they can grow faster. And what's even more importantly, I know thousands of lawyers. I've never met a lawyer who said, I'm not busy. I've never met a lawyer who said, I have too few things on my plate. I've never met a lawyer who would say, man, I wish there was more responsibility. Everyone is terribly busy. Everyone wears multiple hats.
Yep.
It's rare that you meet a lawyer who says, my business can be sold effectively today in one person. You just need one person to take over all of my responsibilities. So talk to me about how you co-founded this company and who you usually work with, and how do people measure like ROI on investment of having you do the work for them?
Yeah, sure. So I'm glad to touch on all those things. First of all, Sasha, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. Second of all, I am a lawyer, and I think that's important because the other thing is important. I have an active law firm. We have anywhere from 10 to 12 attorneys, depending on the week, in Miami, Florida. And the reason I think that's important is because a lot of people who are now trying to give advice are lawyers who never really practiced. And I just think that for credibility wise, I think people like to know that. So in 2018, after growing, my firm at a substantial clip, me and a friend who's also a lawyer decided to start a virtual staffing company because we found that the talent in Latin America was really good. It was, it was hard to find, and it's even harder now to find good staff. We don't do lawyers and we don't do paralegals, but we do the rest of this, all positions at a law firm. And so, we saw a need and we went for it. And the first few years, our conversations with attorneys was, yes, it's okay to work with somebody virtually. You use Zoom and Google Meet and all these things, right? And that was our biggest, well, is it ethical? And can you do that? That was like every day. Those are the conversations we were having. And then the pandemic hit, and it just like in a good way for us. Anyway, just wiped out our biggest objections. And then it was like, can we fill orders fast enough? And so we just absolutely exploded during the pandemic. And here we are. So you asked me 3 questions. I think the last one you said was doing work for you. Can you clarify the last question that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything in business, right? So when I think about selling professional services, any B2B situation, you're buying professional services for one of 3 reasons or a combination of them. Number 1, increase revenue. Number 2, cut costs. Number 3, and this applies to larger businesses, it grow your market share. Okay. So when a law firm hires my team and we do marketing, it's to increase revenue. It's very rare that they hire us to cut costs.
Yeah.
So when they hire you, it is to usually, I would assume, increase revenue because more people, the right people in the right places, will help them grow that revenue while freeing up their time.
Yeah. So, ours is unique because it's actually increased revenue, but it's also cutting costs. Because when you hire offshore, you're spending 25% to like 1/3 of what you would onshore. And as you probably know, and a lot of your clients know, you can increase your revenue, but when your overhead just stays on par with your revenue, like what's the point? And then it's more stressful to have a bigger nut and to have just as thin margins. It's like, what's the point? And so, it's really two of those 3. I had somebody tell me one time it was the rare win-win-win because we are able to be everywhere and it's cheaper and it's better. And that's kind of the argument with healthcare or anything else is it can either be readily available or it can be cheap or it can be good. It can be usually 2 of those things, but not all 3. And this person pointed out, like, you guys are all 3 of those things. And I was like, wow, that's a really great compliment. And I would agree with that.
That makes perfect sense. I know this firsthand because we have 2 production offices based in Eastern Europe. I don't know how much you know about marketing, but all things digital marketing, other than data collection, are incredibly labor intensive. The reason why so many marketing companies fail to deliver substantial results to their clients is you need to have tremendous amount of labor to effectively compete. For most small law firms, buying that much labor is simply not affordable. So what we can deliver, because and these are our own team, we do not outsource it. We actually have 2 offices in Eastern Europe, and they're our people working under our letterhead, name of the company, everything is the same. We can deliver 8 times more labor than when clients pay us in US rates, because our parity between what we pay in payroll here in Chicago and what we pay there in Eastern Europe is 1-8. So I can hire 1 full-timer here or 8 full-timers there. And one of the selection criteria for our people there is that they have to speak English very, very, very well. And guess what? There are a lot of people who speak English very, very, very well. And they're very smart, they're very educated, and they know exactly what they're doing. And I think this is an important point, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the reasons why it's not only cheap or cheaper, but it's also good, because a lot of people in the US, frankly, don't give a shit about their jobs anymore. They can just hop from one company to another. It's not the same in Latin America. It's not the same in Eastern Europe. People do not hop from one job to another. They really care. They really give a shit. So arguably, they can deliver much better quality service to their employer, better outcome, and they care more about the job. Is that the same case for you guys when you outsource?
Absolutely. And part of our pitch is, even if you wanted to hire domestically, it costs you 3 to 4 times as much, especially when you consider all of the withholding and the payroll taxes and all that stuff that people don't factor in, right? There's like 30 to 40% hidden costs. But you're going to get someone who's more loyal, who works harder, and who's actually appreciative of the job, meaning they'll have a better attitude. It is impossible. It is nearly impossible anyway to hire here in the US for administrative level positions and expect that person to just be with you for long term, because those positions don't pay enough. So it makes sense. And something you touched on was the English. I mean, the English, a lot of companies that do what we do are out of the Philippines. And the reason we're not is because we found, first of all, everybody else is. So when everyone else is swerving right, you should swerve left, right? And second of all, the English is phenomenal. The accent, a lot of our people, you can barely tell have an accent. The education, the time zone, it just matches up better culturally with what we're trying to do for our law firm clients. And the other thing, because we have a similar concept as you, but a different model. So we're not an outsourcing company, right? We don't take the work like you do and do it. We find people full-time to place in your law firm, and then we stay on as the payroll and the HR provider, but you get that person 40 hours a week. So whether it's your executive assistant, your full-time receptionist who can have bandwidth to do other things, your billing assistant, your intake coordinator, which is a hugely important piece of a law firm, your legal assistant, your client concierge, what have you, those are the positions that we're placing full-time in law firms.
That makes perfect sense. What are the top 3 positions that you fill?
The top 3 is it's the executive assistant. That's the first one that anybody should do. And then it's the receptionist and the intake coordinator. The reason those are so important is, and you're probably familiar with this as a marketer, right? You can do all the marketing in the world and drive leads, but if the client doesn't have a system or the people to take on the business and to convert the business from a lead to a sale to a client, then what's the point? You're just flushing all that money down the toilet, right? You do all this great marketing, and then somebody calls and says, oh, hey, this is the Sasha Berson law firm. I want to work with you guys. Nobody answers the phone. They answer. It's an answering service. It just takes a message. There's no callbacks. There's no follow-up. There's no system. Or the lawyer tries to do it themselves. I mean, the amount of differentiation that a law firm can do to help them grow just by fixing their intake system is just so easy. It's low-hanging fruit. It's usually that's what's preventing lawyers and law firms from growing more. It's their intake system.
Let me quantify this, by the way. So we have a sales force. It's an internal sales force. And the reason why we have an internal sales force is we draw a ton of interest for our services through SEO and pay-per-click advertising. But organic growth is always capped. So you have to have a sales department. So our sales department calls on law firms, small law firms. Approximately 32% of all calls go, get this, unanswered. Meaning somebody calls your office and there is no one answering the phone. Like if you're listening to this and you think that that doesn't happen in your office, check.
Yeah.
Got an awesome system installed. We installed for all of our clients called CallRail, and track stats for like 2 weeks. You'll be stunned. Like here's how stunned you're going to be. Let's quantify this further. Like really break it down. This is the importance of having an incredibly well-oiled intake machine. Imagine that your receptionist or your answering service, if you're not using a great answering service, misses only 20% of all calls. Half of the calls that you get are potential clients. And 1 out of 4 potential clients becomes a client. Let's say that you have somewhat of a busy law office and you get 100 phone calls. Out of those 100 phone calls, 50 are potential clients. 20 are missed, 20%. So that's 10 calls that are missed. And you close 1 out of 4 potential clients and they become paying clients. So out of 10 missed calls from potential clients, you're missing out on 2.5 cases per month. Multiplied by 12 months, well, that's 30 cases. Average case value on the low end, unless you do like bankruptcy law or real estate law. For most other lawyers, average case value, let's call it $5,000.
Yeah.
For family law attorneys, it's going to be higher. For personal injury attorneys, it's going to be higher. But if you do estate planning or criminal defense, a lot of DUI cases and then some, it's going to be $5K. $5,000 times 30 cases that you missed out on because nobody answered the call when the phone was ringing, $150,000 a year. You practice law for 10 years, $1.5 million went somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because somebody missed phone calls.
For the silliest reason ever.
The silliest reasons ever.
And like you're preaching my message right now. Like, it is so inconceivable that, but I have this horror story too. I had a missed call when I first started my firm. A guy called back 3 times and left me a message every time. I didn't know how my phone system worked. I was horrified when later on I actually was able to capture the message, and I couldn't believe it. So we've all been there, but the important thing is realizing and then doing something about it, because as you grow, that 30 cases per year turns into 40 and 50 because your marketing's working right. So you're missing more calls. I have a whole section in my book about why you should never use an answering service as your primary phone system. You should use them as backup. You know, I won't go into my whole soapbox there, but
but can you tell us real quick why do you believe that?
Yeah, because your clients aren't dummies, right? They know when the person answers the phone, they go, law firm, oh, is Sasha available? Hold on, and they're following a script. They don't know how to say your name. They don't know your schedule. So really they go, well, let me schedule a call back for you, right? Which then you need to rely on that person to know your calendar, which costs more money, and then to actually send you the message. And someone still needs to call that person back anyway. And if you don't have a receptionist, it's probably going to be you. And now you've completely wasted your time, because you as the attorney should never get on the phone with a potential client, or that client won't value your time or your expertise at all. It's like a doctor. What if a cardiologist called you back? Like, oh, hey, Sasha, this is, Dr. Trembly, hoping you're coming for heart surgery soon. You would run the other way, right? Because that doctor should be busier. The amount, there's one company out there I know that does a good job, but you've got to pay them so much. You can hire almost 3 full-time receptionists for that price.
Who is that?
Offshore, right? And so when it comes back to it, I mean, I had a friend who was paying $5,500 a month for a phone company who was taking their calls, doing messages, and doing callbacks. And I'm like, you could have a full-time or two full-time receptionists, and while one's not answering the phone, they've got all this extra capacity to do more things that your law firm needs. So it's just really, really silly to have, to trust such a delicate and important thing like answering phones. Although it doesn't sound that important, it is so crucially important for the growth of your law firm, which you pointed out numbers-wise and quantified it. To trust that to an outside company, most, and I know this business now, so most reception companies, whoever just happens to get the phone, like they have so many people working there, the phone rings, their system lights up, and they're just the person who happens to get it, right? So they don't know you and your system, they're not familiar, and your clients know that when they're calling someone, and it's different every time. So the companies who say, oh no, we have one person for every 5 law firms or 10 law firms, they cycle through those people so fast anyway that they're constantly new and constantly training. So in order to train those people really well, they need to charge a premium. And again, you can get an amazing English-speaking full-time receptionist offshore. So your phone rings offshore and it sounds just the same. It works just the same as somebody who's down the hall from you, again, for the same or less than you would an answering service, and you're going to get 10 times the quality plus extra capacity.
Super interesting. I've actually never thought about it this way, but this makes a lot of sense. So when you get an offshore intake specialist or intake specialist, whatever you call them, whether it's receptionist or intake specialist, you can increase your revenue because they're always there. You can cut your cost because they're going to stick around for longer. Mm-hmm. They're not going to cycle through as US-based employees. Some, not all, but some US-based employees will do, especially when it comes to younger generations. They have jobs. They totally do, right? Like someone who's in their 20s now might be switching a job every 8 to 12 months. It's kind of like a workhorse, right? So increase revenue, cut costs, because you do not have that turnover. And in addition to that, you cut costs on the actual payroll. This is significantly less expensive, 3 to 4 times less expensive. Talk to me about executive assistant. What
right. Before we move on, let me make one more point, because you said closing 25%. That's actually pretty low for a law firm that has a good intake system, because what you don't have is follow-ups. Follow-up is where the magic happens. Follow-up is where you turn your conversion rate from 25% to 50%. And it's critical that your receptionist is not the same person as your intake specialist, because the receptionist answers the phone, but oh no, let me get you on the phone with our intake specialist who will walk you through everything we do. So now that person's elevated. You've already told the caller that we have someone in place who can answer all their questions, who's a higher position, whose job it is to set the consultation with the attorney. So the attorney's not part of any of the attorney's time, shouldn't be part of any of this so far. So it's just critical to realize that with a good intake system, you can increase that 25% conversion to 40% to 50%. So by not hiring, and I make this argument in my book that just came out, right? We haven't really talked about that yet, but it's not like hiring someone costs you money. You're losing $150,000 to, I would argue, $300,000 with that kind of call volume by not making the right hire.
Quite possible. I didn't look at that way, and that makes a lot of sense. Let's dive for a second, and I really do want to talk about your book. But before we move there, executive assistants. What are the typical tasks that executive assistants handle for your clients?
So an executive assistant should be the first hire that any attorney makes. And attorneys, we can spend all day long, and I'm not exaggerating, just lost in our email. And we'll feel real busy, right? Because we'll be emailing people, clients, opposing counsel, referral sources all day long, and feel like we got a lot done, but that's just the hamster wheel problem, right? You're running real hard, but you're in the same spot as you started. So they should manage your email. They should manage your calendar. They should answer your phones until you are able, or you pull the trigger on your second hire, which should be a receptionist. And they should handle, like you should never call someone when you have an appointment. That person should place the call and then patch through. They should email that person 5 minutes before and the day before, making sure that you're still on for that appointment. They should schedule your appointments for you. I mean, you're talking 3 hours per day just put back on your plate automatically with one hire.
Yeah, let me quantify this a little further because I love data and I interview so many people on the podcast that actually do have like hard data.
Right.
6-8 months ago, I interviewed a fascinating guy. He is an in-house attorney who became, man, he is just a brilliant technology mind. He is an internal person at Clio, the most widely used practice management software. Because they have something like 30,000 law firms using their software, they have a lot of data. So one of the pieces of data that blew my mind when Joshua Lennon shared this, look up his podcast. I forget what episode it is, but probably like sometime in 2022. He said that we examined data from thousands of law firms, thousands of lawyers, tens of thousands of lawyers, and here's what we saw. Before they fully embraced use of the software, a typical attorney did 1.7 hours of billable work per day.
Yeah.
Per day. So even if you work just 8 hours a day, which most attorneys don't, they work longer than 8 hours per day, and all you bill for is slightly more than an hour and a half, what happened to the other 6.5 hours? Where did it go? Getting an executive assistant may cut down on administrative shit. It's not a test, it's shit. You shouldn't be like, you're an attorney.
Yeah.
You spent 6-7 years in school. In today's dollars, 2023 dollars, this is $300,000+ investment, an ungodly amount of hours to pass that bar. Why are you doing something that's worth $7 an hour?
Yeah, Sasha, it's like you wrote my book for me. So in the first chapter, it's exactly what I say. I quote the fact that most small firm attorneys bill about 1.5 hours per day, but even if it's 1.7, but that's not what we collect. And I have a whole chapter dedicated to a billing specialist, because when you're trying to do your own collections, oh man, the human emotions, right? You don't want to do it. You don't want to put the invoice together. Even if you're using Clio, right? You got to batch bill, and then you got to review everything, make sure it's worded properly. So you don't send them, and you're like, I'll come in on Saturday, but then you get busy since the next Saturday. So by the time you go to send them, you feel bad because it's late, and then you feel bad anyway because, it's a high amount, and then you didn't warn the person. So now you're giving discounts, you're writing time off, and you're really collecting about an hour per day. And that's exactly what I was doing. That's exactly what the stats is. Horrible. Like you said, you're spending your time. I was spending so much time my first year doing $10 an hour tasks, thinking that I was saving money. It was costing me so much money. So when I hired my first person, I doubled my law firm revenue the very next month. Not 6 months later, not 3 months later, the very next month. And I thought it was this weird phenomenon. And then it's just simple math. Instead of collecting 1 hour per day, I was collecting 2, because I hired one person and I had all this extra time.
Yeah. Some attorneys, I would assume, would have an objection to this. And that objection would probably sound like, yeah, but if I'm going to take on an executive assistant, I'm going to spend money on them. It doesn't mean that I'm going to get more billable work. And to that, even if you don't, I would still argue that you will buy so much of your time. You'll make, even if you do not take on more billable work, you'll make close to what you're making right now. But all of a sudden, 2/3 of your day is free to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do.
To bring on more, to do a little bit of marketing or networking, so you will bring on more billable work. But even unless you only have 2 clients, you have more work than 1 billable hour per day. So you like, people don't realize how much work they have that they're just not getting to. Because I understand that point, which is, well, how do I know I have any more work? I won't have any more work, so I can't pay this person. So instead of making 10 grand per month, now I'll be only making 8 because I'm paying this. That's not the way it works. These people not hiring costs you money.
100%. It's a really hard mindset to overcome. But once you do, the only thing that you will keep on thinking is, well, you'll beat yourself up over not having done it years ago.
Yeah.
Because you probably have heard this thought before. This idea was shared before, and you just didn't pull the trigger. And more often than not, it's either complacency or fear of just change, or fear of, yeah, but I'm going to have an additional expense, which again, like, I'm 100% with you, Brett. It's not an additional cost.
Yeah.
It's a freedom multiplier.
For me, it was fear of failure. And it's also that your emotions are so tied up with your revenue that you're terrified. You're like, oh, I can't deal with someone because you're already stretched so thin. Like you were saying, there's no time for your family. You're always busy. You're always overworked. Yeah, I can't even deal with that. I can't even hire. So you're right. It's not the first time someone's heard this. And it took me a few times. And like, I can't quite pin down the right words so that when someone does hear it from me, it clicks every time. Like I struggle for years finding those magic words so that whoever's listening to this, Sasha, me and you are like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. For some reason, our subconscious, which is designed to protect our egos and make us feel better, we put up all these barriers. So it's like, good idea. And we're just shielding ourselves. No, that's not me. It can't be me. I can't save time. I can't make more money. And it's like heartbreaking and frustrating all at the same time.
Yeah. I have a friend, Sam Malay. He's been on this podcast as well. He's the founder of a virtual law firm. It's a training platform for small law firm owners, and he teaches them how to build what you're proposing, a virtual law firm where your staff does not all sit in one office, where you save a ton of time, a ton of energy. By the way, things like dealing with billing doesn't give you extra energy. It drains you of energy. You're a lawyer. You don't want, why are you doing billing?
Mm-hmm.
Who feels good sending out invoices and reminding clients to pay them? It's a dreaded experience.
Yeah.
It also kind of downgrades you in the eyes of your clients.
Yeah, you're exactly.
Good, period.
Just like the doctor. What if your heart surgeon sent you a bill and asked you to pay? You'd have a physical, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, oh shit, I have the work. I need to go. I need to run. And that's the same reaction people have from attorneys when they're so small. They're doing everything. They don't respect you more. They're looking at you like this person doesn't have their shit together. The only possible reason they would want to work with you is they think they can get you for way cheaper.
That makes so much sense. There was a story, I read it somewhere, heard it somewhere many years ago. This prospect, it's a big case, goes in to interview this like top-notch law firm, goes into the conference room, sits there with lawyers for hours. They talk about the case. I mean, this is a big case.
Yeah.
He leaves the firm and then he ends up not hiring them. The partner who was there calls on the guy and he's like, why didn't you hire us? We're the best of the best. He's like, I know that's what I've been told, that you're the best of the best, but the matter is that your conference room is adjacent to your reception area. I was there for 4 hours. Your receptionist was there and your phone never rang. How good could you possibly be if your phone doesn't ring for 4 hours? Perceptions create reality.
Yeah.
So if you're doing your own billing, maybe you also clean up the office, maybe you do something else. How good of an attorney can you be? You want somebody who you perceive as incredibly busy, doing important work, and doing billing and follow up on billing. It's not. No. It's important for the business. It's not important for a good attorney. So
yeah, and I make that exact point in my book, and I'm not trying to interrupt your plug, but I'm just really excited because this book right here, 24 Months to Freedom, you can't read the subtitle, How Modern Law Firms Use Smarter Staffing Solutions to Fast Track Their Way to Success, just came out 2 weeks ago. And I make so many of the points that you're making, right? The perception that you're creating, it's all right here. And I'm laying out a timeline, and I know 24 months, everybody wants the 5-minute answer, right? Not the real work answer. But yeah, I lay out the timeline, the money, how much you can expect to make, and all the reasons why right there.
I want to read the book. Is it on Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon. But for your listeners, Sasha, we created a landing page. It's getstaffedup.com/Sasha Berson. So if you go there, then there's a link to the book, which is a link to Amazon, and also a discount code in case anybody's really intrigued and wants to work with us.
I want the book. I'm going to the landing page. I love consuming. I have, at the present moment, I have this book for lawyers, this book for lawyers,
Wow.
And this book for lawyers, they're all on my desk.
Okay.
And this is like, I actually already read this one. It's a good book about virtual law firms. I do have some areas that I've highlighted because I need to implement them myself.
Okay.
So once I'm done with this, then I'm going to the next book. But your book, I'm getting it. That's awesome.
Well, that's why people hire you. You're a student of the game, and that's what matters.
Oh, you have to be. And this is another point. Like once you free yourself up from doing those $7, $8, $10 an hour tasks, one of the things, and I find this to be such a big differentiator for attorneys that do very well versus most others, is that those who do incredibly well, they usually have developed business acumen. And the only way to develop a business acumen, none of us are born with it. But the way to develop a business acumen is by reading books, watching webinars, going to seminars, all of those things. So free up your time and study business and develop a better law firm, better business that could be sellable. Most law firms are not sellable.
Yeah.
When you're ready to retire, you can't sell it. Nobody wants it, right? Because there are no systems. Having the right people in the right places replaces you in some things, some ways, and gives you a lot of freedom. So I definitely highly recommend it. Check out the website, getstaffedup.com. Check out the book. There's that special offer at getstaffedup.com/Sasha Berson. Any parting words?
No, I really enjoyed talking to you today because we see eye to eye in so many of these things. And I don't think there's a problem that exists that hasn't already been solved and put in a book. So I just want to echo what you said about, reading early on is really what helped me change my law firm and my outlook and get over that fear of failure. So I completely agree with you. And those sound like good books. I really hope mine's good. And if you read it and give me feedback, Sasha, I would love it. And thanks for having me on.
My absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thanks, Brad.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Man, this was great. I am so stoked to read the book.
Thank you.
I know I will get some good ideas out of there. So.
It's funny. The guy who helped me write the book, his name's Steve Gordon. He's like an author sort of guru. He's got 5 books, and now he helps people write and all that kind of stuff. So he's been working with me on it for months. He didn't tell me this. He said, you know what? I think I need to hire you guys, but he didn't tell me what he was doing. He put in the intake system that I kind of argue for in the book, and he hired an intake and a salesperson. And he told me later that he not only had his best month ever in sales because he took himself out of the process because he was creating that perception you and I are talking about of like, why is this person, so accessible? Why are they talking to me? He also did it while he took 11 days off with no access to him, which he hadn't done in years. So I was just like blown away, man. And I really think, man, the more people that take this advice, I'm pumped. I love helping people.
Yeah. Hey, check it out. There is a new book that came out 4, 5, 6 weeks ago called 10X is Easier Than 2X. It's by Dan Sullivan, who founded The Strategic Coach, and his co-author, Ben Hardy. Those 2 guys are incredibly smart. Guess what? They suggested like the starting point for developing more freedom in your life. The book is written for fairly successful entrepreneurs.
Okay.
The very first day, like the starting point is get an executive assistant.
Executive, of course.
That was it. Where to begin? Step 1, get an executive assistant.
That's exactly right.
I was just like, all right, cool. Like exactly what you said.
Yeah. I'm gonna buy that now. I'll check it out.
Listen, anything that you can get your hands on that's written by those 2 guys,
yeah,
really good. So Ben Hardy is PhD in psychology. He co-authored now 5 books in the span of like 3 or 4 years with Dan Sullivan. And Dan Sullivan has been a business consultant for successful entrepreneurs. Like you can't join him if you have a very small business. I don't know if they verify your business tax returns or not, but maybe. My partner is now a part of their program. I just really like their books. I haven't joined the program.
Okay.
But 10X is Easier Than 2X. Brilliant book. Another one is, and this one, you don't have to be a business owner to really appreciate it, The Gap and the Gain.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one. I haven't read it yet.
Spectacular. If you worry about how far you've come in your life, like I should have been further along, but I'm not. And this is just so me, right? Like we should have been here, but here we are and we're there, right? So that book just, well, like I listened to it a couple of times, put my mind at ease. And then the third one of my favorite is Not Who, But How.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, not how, but who.
But who, yeah.
And this is the problem that you solve, right? Like you don't have to figure out how to do everything. You don't have to do everything. Get the right who's in the right places, and your life will improve.
Yep. Oh,
All
same.
of those three books are connected. I'm only recommending the 3 out of 5 because those are the ones that I listen to. I do not know about the other two. So like these like very firm recommendations. The other two I just haven't gotten around to yet.
The gap and the gain is something my business coach refers to often. So I know about that one.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Well, Sasha, I know you got a hard stop in a few minutes, so I want to thank you again for having me on.
It's been great. Absolutely. We'll stay in touch somehow. I'm sure I'm going to have some referrals for you coming down the road at some point.
Hey,
one of them is going to be actually like our corporate attorney, who is also our client, who as soon as you start talking about billing, I'm like, come on, Andrew. He's a great guy. Great attorney. He has been a client of ours for years. We've been a client of his for the last couple of years. But boy, oh boy, like they do a lot of things that I assume they shouldn't be doing, including billing.
Yeah. If you really just want to like fix things quickly and you hired an executive assistant, if you're like a really small law firm and that executive assistant could answer the phones for you, right? You would train them. Plus a billing clerk or a billing specialist, your life would do a 180. Total 180. There's so much money that lawyers have sitting out there in AR. Most lawyers have $80,000 to $100,000 that they just haven't reached out for.
How much? 80 to 100,000?
Yeah. I talked to a guy the other day and I said that and he's like, I had 700 at one point. It's mind blowing. You know, we just don't like to send the damn bill.
It makes perfect sense. So I think I'm just gonna send this raw recording, not wait until it's post-production edited by my team. I'll just send it to Andrew and be like, man, do me a favor, like bill me for this hour, but watch this.
That's funny. Well, listen, I really love meeting like-minded people who are in the space. So let's stay in touch, Sasha. I enjoyed today.
Thanks, Brett. Likewise. Take care.
All right. You as well.
This thing is going to be produced like within the next 2-3 weeks. And I'll send you all the marketing assets. You're going to have the recording, video recording. They will grab like a couple of pictures of you off the internet. If you want to send me any pictures that you really want us to use, we'll use those. Yeah, we'll send you everything once it's all done. Couple weeks.
Awesome.
Cool, man. Well, great to meet you.
Thank you as well. Take care, Sasha. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye.